This is John Abrams, and this is the Variety Artist, episode 69. Today's guest is magician Peter Samelson, not to be confused with movie producer Peter Samuelson. It's a long story. If you want to know the entire thing, listen to episode 64. I tell the whole story there. Peter Samelson is a treasure. His knowledge of magic in New York and across the country is unparalleled. But don't let this scare you off. Even if you're not a magician, Peter's philosophies apply to you too. But if you are a magician, you're in for a special treat. Today, you'll learn about storytelling in your performance, the 3 questions you must ask yourself when putting together a new piece, and stories that'll make your head spin. We even talk about Einstein's brain. You'll also learn about Monday Night Magic, the longest running magic show in New York, how it got started, how it changed all the magic shows around it, how to get booked, everything. Have fun. I know I did.
Welcome to The Variety Artist, providing aspiring artists and entertainers with in-depth discussions from top performers from all over the world. So get ready to book some gigs, make some money, and have some fun with your host, John Abrams.
My guest today was christened the soft-spoken conceptualist of sorcery by the New York Times. He's one of the founders of Monday Night Magic, which now, in its 23rd year, is the longest-running magic show in New York. Illusionist, entertainer, and philosopher. Variety artist, I give you Peter Samelson. How you doing, Peter?
I'm doing just great. I am doing just great, John.
Good. Now, for people who have not seen your act, what exactly is it that you do?
Oh, it's a really good question. I tend to work in a lot of different forms and formats. I do everything from close-up. There was a time when I toured with a full-stage solo, full-stage illusion show. Ran 2+ hours that I toured around countries. I've done parlor. I've done cruise ships. I've designed magic for everything from commercials to films to Broadway shows. I've done hand modeling in commercials themselves.
Now, your magic act, one of the things that I love about your magic act, or I've seen different portions of it, I imagine I haven't seen the whole thing, is your storytelling and magic.
Yeah.
How did that all start up?
Years ago, magic for me was just one of many interests when I was growing up as a kid, although I have to say that it started when I was pretty young, that I was probably about 6 years old, and I had a great aunt who at one Christmas decided she was going to surprise me. Had heard that I was interested in magic, and so got me a magic set for Christmas. And when I opened it up, I started looking through it and was so disappointed that it was all tricks that I gave it back to her. And I told her that she'd gotten me the wrong set.
That it wasn't real magic?
Exactly. As a young kid, that's what you want. At the age of 11, at school assembly, I saw a magician who performed a couple of things that still stick in my mind. Magicians would recognize them, the Loda Bowl and Serpent Silk and things along those lines. But those are the ones that really stuck in my mind. And I went back to my mom at that point and said, "Listen, I'm an adult now. I'm old enough that I know that it's not real magic, but I'd like to figure out how this stuff works."
Sure.
And she said, "Well, hang on," and reached out to one of her friends who was a university professor. We were living in Ann Arbor at the time. And he passed along a book to me that I still have sitting on my bookshelf just behind me right up there. I can see it at this very moment, called Modern Magic by Professor Hoffman, written in 1890.
Oh, my.
So as a young lad, I started building things from the book and put together a little theater in my basement, and went on to found a magic club in my junior high school, and then eventually in the high school. And that was at the same time I was doing theater, as a part of junior theater at the time. I was a Boy Scout. I went to summer camp. I played music in both the marching band, the concert band, and the orchestra. I played trumpet. This plus carrying on a pretty full load of academic stuff. I was a faculty brat. So my father was a professor of mathematics. It was always kind of assumed that I would end up in academia. And so I ended up pursuing that and going into physics. And that's where I thought I was going to end up being.
Did you find that doing the band thing and all of those things that you had done somehow culminated into your magic career somehow?
You started off with a question about how did I end up in the storytelling aspect of this?
Yeah.
And all of these things kind of come together at sort of the culmination of all of that when I ending up in New York as an actor and starving actor, and realizing that I probably wasn't going to get cast in a lot of things, and I was never going to make my living doing that.
By the way, you and I both, me on the West Coast and you on the East Coast, I started out the exact same way, beating the streets of Hollywood, kind of the other coast, trying to become an actor, trying to make a living becoming an actor.
Oh, good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I hit New York, and when I hit New York, at the time, the percentages were something in the order of all equity actors, less than 10% made more than $5,000 a year.
Right.
And of the 10% that made more than $5,000 a year, 90% of those people made their money in commercials.
Mm.
So looking at those statistics, I went, ooh, and my college girlfriend and I, who had moved to New York to do theater, and I had a cousin with connections up in the Adirondacks. And so we had put together a summer theater company of 10 actors who were going to go up to the Adirondacks, and we were going to tour 3 different shows, one of which was a melodrama.
Yeah.
And in the first town we booked our shows into, there'd been somebody that had done that show the previous year. And we went, oh, well, what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
And they looked at me and they said, well, how about a magic show? And I went, oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
We've got a cast of 10. We'll do a show. And so that's really when I got seriously into thinking that maybe the magic was a little bit more viable and could sort of take on a theatrical form. So we put together this fabulous little magic show that we toured as part of the package that summer. And it went really well. Sort of from then on, it spiraled into existence. And I came to realize that if I wasn't going to make a living in theater, but I could make a living in magic, then I was going to make magic my theater, and I was going to make whatever theater I was doing magical. So that's where they converged.
Every time I interview somebody new, I put on my Facebook group that they can ask me to ask questions of my guest. And I don't know, do you know Phil Ackerley?
Sure, I know Phil very well.
So Phil Ackerley didn't have a question, but here's what he wrote, and I have to read this to you word for word. There are things that leave an indelible impression in our lives, and that's when I first saw Peter do the snowstorm at a theater in San Jose. As he starts the snow, all the stage lights went out except for an overhead pin spot. I swear the snowstorm stayed up there for several minutes. That feeling of awe I've not forgotten.
So there are a couple of things that I really like about that, and one is that it's something that becomes indelible, that becomes a memory, that becomes something that gets reflected on, that you come back to, and it's always. I will tell you this, that when I came to the point of realizing that I wasn't going to be a physicist, that there were guys, because I went to school at Stanford, and I realized that there were guys there who were really smart. I mean, really, really scary smart, for whom physics was like poetry. They could write these beautiful ideas, and they would create this. And I knew that they were going to be doing some very cool stuff that was going to make a difference in the world. And I said, that's not going to be me. I'm going to end up working some sort of mediocre job someplace. And that's not really where I want to spend my energy. Yeah, I make a living at it, but I really want to make a difference in some way.
Sure.
And I kind of thought, well, the thing about theater is that there's a chance that there's one person in the audience for whom that event is going to make a difference. It's going to touch them emotionally. It's going to move them. It's going to bring them to a place, a different way of thinking about themselves and the world. And that can be a very powerful experience. And if I could do that, that would be good.
Yeah.
And so that's really what drew me towards that final decision to sort of settle on theater. And ultimately, since the magic was where I was going to be doing that theater, I realized that the magic had to find a way of making that connection. So if I can, I'm going to just give you one little, three, quick.
Please.
Little, oh, okay, four. No, three.
9. I don't know.
Exactly. Can I have 11? I want a full dozen. And if it's going to be a dozen, make it 13.
That's right.
So, in the area where I live, which is in the area of Montclair and Bloomfield and Glen Ridge and Verona in New Jersey, it's kind of near the Oranges. It's 13 miles, 12 miles west out of New York City. Okay. So I'm in a bar called The Office in Montclair, and I'm sitting there having a drink a couple years back, and a woman comes up to me and she says, are you a magician? And I go, yeah, I am. And she said, I thought so because I saw you perform, it must be about a year ago, and you did a piece of magic with a piece of string. And I was just thinking about that today. And I went, whoa. That was followed like a year ago. I finished performing at Monday Night Magic, and I do this thread piece still. It's a piece called Heartstrings.
Yes.
And it talks about relationships. And it's a classic piece of magic in which you have a piece of string, a thread that you show. It's maybe 30 inches long, something like that. And you break it up into short segments. And then you roll those pieces into a ball and blow on this, and the thread comes out again completely restored.
Right.
And I've always looked at that as a beautiful piece of magic. But for me, I need to understand why something resonates. What is it that it touches inside both me and an audience?
Yeah.
And ask me later about my 3 questions.
I will.
So this piece is really about this desire we have of how connections to people, this fragile thread that ties 2 people together, can be broken. And it's broken sometimes for the most ill reasons, and sometimes for the most ludicrous and silly and superficial and foolish reasons. As youth, we're just so, and we often throw away important relationships for really meaningless reasons. And so there's this dream we have of sometimes thinking about, oh man, if I just hadn't said that, or what if I did that differently? So to me, that's what that thread piece is about. It's about the things that tear us apart, that break those connections, and the fact that we keep dreaming, we keep hoping, in spite of these years of being beaten down and going through these relationships that fall apart or break apart. We still keep trying, we keep hoping, throughout our lives to try and put things back together. So that's for those people who haven't seen this piece. So at Monday Night Magic, a year or so ago, I was doing the show, and after the show, we go out to the lobby and greet people as they're coming out of the theater and thank them for coming. And a young woman came up to me, and she was covered with scars. They looked like they were fairly recent. They weren't completely gone. There was still a redness to some of these. And she came up to me and she said, I don't know if you, and she was clearly getting emotional. She said, I don't know if you meant this, but when you did that piece with the thread, she said, she said, I can't say this without sort of getting emotional. And she started to get really emotional. She said, it gave me the feeling that you were saying that even things that are really damaged can still be put back together again. And I started looking at the scars on her body, and I thought, what is this girl going through? What has happened to her? And the fact that was able to, that little piece of magic gave her that emotional support, that opportunity to make a connection with herself and her life in a way that helped out. So that sounds pretty, self-important and grandiose. But the truth of the matter is that that's kind of what you want to do. That's where I started out wanting to do this, is to try to make have that performance make a difference, to touch somebody in the audience in a way that they won't forget it. They will remember it, that'll stay with them for a while and maybe bring them some joy or make them, well.
That's a big payoff for us.
Norman Lear, who, as you know, produced All in the Family and all the Archie Bunker series and a bunch of other stuff, started People from the American Way and other stuff. He, in producing the show, was often queried about why he was doing a television show about a redneck, who Archie Bunker was, and this guy was extremely prejudiced and opinionated and all this. And he said, you can say anything you want to as long as you package it between two laughs.
Mm.
And that's always resonated with me. And I've always thought, that's really true. And we have this amazing thing in the magic world where people get caught up in it, and they really do. We have this opportunity to package ideas and meaning and stuff inside of the tricks we do, the routines that we do,
Yeah.
And even if we don't mean to be saying stuff, we are, because the imagery that we use communicates.
Sure.
It shares a point of view.
Yeah. So if you're smart, you'll take your point of view and put it into your magic.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll also be conscious about what it is that you're saying with your imagery.
Right. Because if you're not conscious with it, you can get yourself in trouble.
Yeah. Or you can say stuff that you really don't mean, or that you're sort of, deaf or blind to.
Now, you asked me to ask you about 3 questions.
Oh, yeah. So
Peter, what about 3 questions?
Oh, okay. Hey, you were going to ask me about that. Oh, I'm glad you remembered. Good. So anytime I start to look at a piece of magic and sort of go, okay, so I like this magic, or I see something that fools me or gives me what happens when you watch somebody else do a piece of magic, or they're teaching something, or they're doing something, and you just go, oh, that's great.
Oh yeah.
And you have this feeling that you look at it and you get excited just looking at this. There's something that it's making a connection with you in some way, and I like to figure out why that is, because ultimately I want to, if it's something that I can do, that's either on the market or they're teaching or it's in a book or something along those lines that you get excited about, then you need to kind of ask yourself, well, what is it that you like about this? Mm-hmm. Why is it that what draws you to this? What is it about this? So the 3 questions are why, what, and who.
Okay.
So those 3 questions each have 2 parts, and the why is why am I interested in this, or why do I like this piece of magic, and why do I want to do it? And the other part of that question is, why should anybody care?
Okay.
In looking at this, it's like, why should anybody care that you're doing this trick for them?
Huh?
Aside from just, it's going to be fun, it's going to be amusing, it's going to make somebody laugh, it's going to be so what then becomes, well, what would this look like if it was real magic? And that really sort of is a technical part of this thing. So if I could really do this thing, how can I make this look as much like real magic as possible? Yeah. And so the other part of the what is this trick about? So for me, the thread piece is about the connection that gets broken, and that if you could really do magic, you would want to put that back together again.
Yeah.
So that's what that's about. And then the who is who is the character that you're doing this, and who's your audience? Because if you're working for kids, it's a lot different than working for 30-something hedge fund managers.
That's right.
You're at their cocktail party. So, you kind of need to choose the material for the venue and where you're working. So those are the 3 questions, and you can kind of apply them to anything.
Anybody listening to this can apply it to any art.
And speaking of art, many magicians say, well, magic is an art. Well, no, it's not an art. It has the opportunity to do that. It has the potential to be an art. Mm-hmm. Just like other things, it's only an art if you make it one. And the question is, what does that mean? What does it mean that something is an art? A lot of people talk about this. Jansen, when I was in college, the art history course used Jansen's history of art, and his kind of definition of it I thought was pretty interesting. It's like somebody becomes an art as opposed to a craft when it involves a leap of the imagination, either in the technique or in the concept. And the concept can be something that it communicates to the audience. because we can be great craftsmen. And it doesn't mean that what we're doing is art. It means that what we're doing is really great, really good.
It's kind of like the gypsy thread.
Yeah.
Technically, you can do it, and you can tear the pieces apart and put them back together. Wow, wonderful. But how does that become artistic?
And there are a lot of ways it can be done that way. It turns out a friend of mine was at a presentation on NYU campus. A couple of neuroscientists came in to talk about thinking and the process in the brain and stuff. And it turned out they used that a video off of YouTube of the thread piece of mine for their presentation. Oh. And what they did is they presented it first in its full entirety. They credited me, which was really nice. So they showed it in its full entirety with it has music behind it, which is a whole other story. And then the text and the whole piece. So they did that. And then they said, well, what happens now if you just watch it without the script, just in silence? And the experience is completely different. Yeah. When you package something between two laughs, or if you contextualize what you're doing, if you embrace the imagery that's there to give people something more than just a trick to be baffled by, it often really enhances the experience for them and gives it something that they can latch onto.
And that they can take with them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's part of the reason that you name your tricks.
You name all of your tricks?
Yeah. The ones that really work, I tend to, yeah.
Well, hopefully the ones that don't work, you discard, I hope.
Here's the thing. So I told you there were three things. I told you two of the stories. So the third story I was going to tell you, it just happened on a cruise. I just came back from working for the Magic Castle at Sea, which is a program that's on Crystal Cruises. And we do, it's formal close-up on the cruise ships, which means that there's a small group of people that kind of self-select because they announce this at the beginning of the cruise and then never mention it again. And people have to go to the library in the ship and they're given a ticket to a particular show that happens on a particular date and a particular time, always in the same location. So, and that's limited to 20 people.
Wow. Wait, let's back up. I've been doing this a long time. I've never heard of this. This is the Magic Castle on the Sea through Crystal Cruise Line?
Magic Castle at Sea, exactly right. This was the brainchild of Rich Block and Milt Larson.
Okay.
And so this is a fantastic program. It was a 16-day cruise, and you almost always just work on sea days. So, and there are two shows, for example, and their shows are 20 minutes, 25 minutes a piece. So they're short. They're not big, but it's the opportunity to do real formal close-up. And one of the things that I do is I always do a show for the restaurant staff on board because they never get a chance to come see any of these shows. And then I will also occasionally do magic for some of the bartenders because we always mingle and hang out and do some stuff. And on the last cruise, I had I ran into a woman who had seen me about a year and a half before, something like that. She said, "Oh, yeah," and called her friends over and said, "Oh, yeah, this guy's great. And he does this, and he does this, and he does the Phoenix." And it's like, the Phoenix is great. It's like this thing with that. The Phoenix is is the presentation of a burned and restored napkin piece. Yep. But for her, because it's named, because she has now, instead of going, "Oh, yeah, he did this thing. Had this napkin, and he burned the napkin, and then it went back." It's like it becomes something that she can remember. And so by naming things like Body Snatchers or the Phoenix or Heartstrings or things along these lines, the Snowstorm, the Smoke, these are things that I'm really happy with because, and this gives people a way to grab onto them as the experience rather than just a magic trick.
The Body Snatchers thing, I just watched that video 5 minutes before we came on. It's super fun. It's really, really good.
Yeah. Well, the guy who wrote the original Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which was originally a book, a guy named Jack Finney. Jack Finney lived in San Francisco, and when I was getting back into magic, kind of seriously, I saw Slidini at a place called the Magic Cellar, which was in San Francisco. The Magic Cellar was set up by Pete and Cedric Clute, and downstairs in the cellar, these guys had found, they were working on antique cars, and at one point the antique car fell off the blocks and knocked a hole in the wall in the little garage they were working in. They kind of looked through and they went, oh my God. And they looked inside and they saw these magic illusions and these boxes. And it turns out this was the storage place of Carter the Great's both ephemera and his illusions. And they contacted Carter's widow and the estate, and they bought this stuff. And so
wait. So they just stumbled upon it, basically,
completely by chance. It was just nobody knew about it. It was just stored there. So they brought these illusions and they filled this place called the Magic Cellar with this place, and it existed for 13, 15 years, something like that, maybe 20 years. And it was this fabulous place where both local magicians and then traveling magicians would come by. And I went up one night, and I hadn't known who Slidini was. And I'd kind of gotten blasé about magic, and it's all moves. And, after a while you can kind of learn all the stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. All right. And then I watched Tony Slidini work, and there were no moves. He did nothing. And real magic happened. And it was an experience for me of this. I went, I'm gobsmacked. I have no idea what's going on here. And I love that feeling. It feels like I'm watching real magic.
Yeah.
So I actually had a chance to perform there at one point when I was still out there. And I was doing body snatchers there, and they invited Jack Finney down, who'd written the original book and who saw his book turned into a movie, which became this iconic movie in the 50s, 1956. Kevin McCarthy, Dana Winters, story about aliens that descend and emit these huge pea pods, and they split open, they start taking over this town, and people become totally emotionless. And it was this allegory for communism in the 50s and stuff and other things. So it was this great thing. So I did my version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers for him, and he looked at it and he looked at me and he went, I wasn't surprised when they made a movie out of my book, but a card trick? I went, yeah, a card trick. And it was this great moment for me to have this guy realize that his thing had this reverberation in all these other different forms. It's like this surprise for him. I think he was pleased.
I would think so. I would think both of you were pleased.
I was thrilled to meet him. So
I'm sure. Now tell me about, since we're talking about authors and such, Robert Heinlein. Now, when I read this, I had to look up Robert Heinlein. Who is that?
So Robert Heinlein was the guy who wrote Stranger in a Strange Land. He wrote Moon is a Harsh Mistress. He wrote a number of classic science fiction books. So Heinlein was this great, fabulous author and very well known in the science fiction community and out there. And it turned out that, and this was like 1984, and he was recovering from a heart procedure and stuff, and he and his wife, Virginia, were out on a world cruise. It may have been on the QE2, or it may have been on the Rotterdam. I really don't remember which, but I do remember, coming upon these people and realizing who this was, and also realizing that the people on the ship were much older than I was, the passengers, and nobody knew who he was because they were not hip to the current happenings in science fiction and what was going on there. And so I went up and I introduced myself to him. He and his wife Virginia were just delightful and really wonderful people. They actually invited me to play Scrabble with Heinlein, and it's like, this man would write science fiction movies and never do science fiction books and not rewrite. He would go back and do some minor corrections, but he'd never rewrite the book. It was like he was such an amazing author that he really, his control and his use of words and his understanding of structure was so great. So playing Scrabble with he and his wife, who was equally brilliant, was a little intimidating. They tolerated me. And we pulled into Sri Lanka, on one of the ports. And do you know the name Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Okay, I do know. I know 2001. Yeah,
exactly. So Clarke is like, another one of the gods, in the science fiction world. And Clarke was living on the top of a mountain in Sri Lanka, in a town called Kandy up there. And so this is like in 84, and Clarke comes down and meets Heinlein on the pier, and then takes him up to his mountaintop retreat. by helicopter at the time. And it was like to witness this, to see these meetings of these two great science fiction authors was just stunning.
I was just thinking to myself, gee, if you could create a card trick around 2001, you could present both of those pieces to both of them.
Exactly.
It'd be a party.
Exactly. It would be a party.
All right, well, let's get into Monday Night Magic. What exactly is Monday Night Magic?
Monday Night Magic is the longest running off-Broadway magic show in New York history. Now in our 23rd year, we celebrate a record every week as the run continues. So our audiences are record-making and record-breaking every week. So it's a fantastic thing. I was just emceeing last night, and we had a fabulous show last night. Chris Capehart, who is just a wonderful performer and just knock it out of the park, headlined our show last night, and I had the pleasure of being the MC on the show. Francis Minotti, who was one of the first American magicians to fool Penn and Teller on their fabulous show, Fool Us, was on. He and Lindsay Noel have a new act that they're doing together called A Couple of Magicians, and they're doing a very interesting scripted act, and Francis is very innovative and does some great stuff. And opening the show was Lena Liu, who holds 2 Guinness World Book records, one from 2009, the other from 2011. One of the records is in balancing, and the other is in juggling. And she lies on her back and juggles these huge parasols, umbrellas. And she's done this around the world and has performed everywhere that you can think of, from Paris to London, even to the Davos International Economic Forum. We have international artists that come through, Colin Cloud and Raymond Crow were up who were touring with the Illusionists, and they came in and did a guest spot for us as well. It's a remarkable show. We've had nearly 500 magicians from all around the world.
How do you choose your performers?
There's a committee. So when applications come in, they come in either through one of us or through Michael Choud, who is the founding member of Monday Night Magic. It was Michael's idea originally. So people reach out to us and they submit a video, or if we've seen them and know them personally and can vouch for them, then we go yes. So that's really what happens. It's an act that's reviewed, and the funny thing is, knowing our clients or our audiences, there are times when we know that a particular act can be very good and still not appropriate. Yeah. So there are times when we go, oh, this is great. This is somebody that's brand new. We want to put them on stage, and we will mentor people as well. So they may get a guest spot to come in and do, 10 minutes as part of the show if we feel that it's something we want to give them a chance to work on.
It show's been around for so long. Was it affected during 9/11?
We actually continued to go through without a huge blip on that. So Michael Choud, who's the originator of this idea, had contacted John Lenahan. Now, John Lenahan is an American magician and comedian who moved to London many years ago. And he realized that the theaters were dark on Monday nights. And so he thought, well, why don't I use that Monday night to put on a show? And the original Monday Night Magic began in London, and Michael reached out to John and said, we love this concept. Could we license this from you in order to run in New York? And John said, yeah, we can definitely do that. Anytime I'm in town, you have to buy me a beer. And we said, we can handle that.
I think I can handle that.
Yeah. So we did that. Anyway, and Michael reached out to me, and Michael said, Peter, there is no show going on in New York at the time. Mostly Magic had closed. That was Imam's place. The Magic Townhouse was no longer open. There was no place for magic in New York. No place that people could go to see a live magic show. And I said, absolutely, I'm in on this. Let me know what I can do to help. He said, you haven't asked about the money. I said, I don't care. That's not the point. The point is that New York needs to have a place where people can go to see live magic. Yeah. And we began doing it. And he said, anybody else? I said, yeah, my buddy Jamie Swiss would be great to do this. So we reached out to Jamie on this, and Jamie really quizzed Michael. He said, are you just in this to try and make money on this, or do you want to really have a quality show? Are you going to just want to put your friends on, or do you want to make something that's going to really make a difference? And Michael said, no, I really want this to be a good, high quality show. And Jim said, okay, I'll work doing this. And then Jamie reached out to Todd Robbins. And the fifth member at the time was a performer, a wonderful magician named Frank Brentz. He's no longer with us. One of the very early influences on Lance Burton, a performer who toured on cruise ships. Was on the same lines that I was working on. A very beautiful Dove Act and other pieces, great mentalism, a great thinker of magic. Toured and played in Paris, one of the first black magicians to work the Parisian stages. It was just great. But Frank left us a couple of years ago, unfortunately. Oh. So it's just the four of us now, and we're doing this. And so we reached out, we started it, and it was a struggle. We started once a month, and then after trying it, we realized that if you're doing it once a month, it's a little, people go, is it this Monday that they're on, or is it next week? And so if you do it every week, then they know that it doesn't matter. As long as it's a Monday, they'll be able to come see a show.
And it's called Monday Night Magic.
Yeah. How about that for branding? We tried doing it on Tuesday night. It didn't work so well. So,
yeah, Monday Night Magic on Tuesday night doesn't work.
Yeah, no. So,
Peter, we're going to do this fact or something John just made up. Sound like fun?
Oh, okay. Yeah, sounds like great fun.
Is it fact? Or is it something John just made up?
So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to give you a headline, and you're going to tell me whether it's true or not. And if it is true, tell me a little more about it. Here comes the first one. Peter performed on the Great Wall of China.
And the answer is? True. It's absolutely true. Yeah, it's absolutely true.
How did that come about?
This is the early years when I first started working cruise ships. It was so strange. I was working at this little club called the Magic Townhouse. It was on 61st, 3rd Avenue at 61st Street, right above the Bagel Chateau. and all sorts of great people would come there. That's where I met Penn and Teller when they came. They were still Asparagus Valley Cultural Society. Slidini was there. Frank Garcia was there. I mean, all these fabulous folks came in and did this. A guy named Jack London came in through, not the writer, but the magician. Glenn Greenpater. I mean, lots of folks came through there. It was run by Dorothy Dietrich and Dick Brooks. And there were lots and lots of people that came through there and do this. So I was doing close-up magic, and I was doing a bunch of other stuff that was in there. And some guys came to see the show. And at the time, I was still doing some college shows around it. And they came and saw the close-up magic and said, hey, well, we really like your stuff. I said, well, thanks very much. They said, well, we'd like to have you work with cruise. And I said, well, you just saw me just do close-up. They say, you do stage stuff? I went, yeah, I do. You haven't seen it. And they went, it doesn't matter. We're sure it's good. It's like, okay. All right. And I said, okay, great, terrific. They said, well, call us tomorrow. I thought, yeah, sure. Eventually, we got in touch again. They said, yeah, we want you to work Los Angeles to Hong Kong. And I was flabbergasted. I'd never worked a ship before. I had no idea what was going on. I was, used to working colleges where you'd walk into a theater and you had time to set up and do this. So this was amazing. And I did. And I did this first cruise, and it was like, wow, this is great. This is scary and great. And it got me to places I've never been before. And one of those was Hong Kong.
Oh.
And I went in, and we went up into China because there was a little thing that happened in there. And I met people that were there. And I was scheduled to pick up the world cruise on the ship in Hong Kong the next year. And so I started reaching out to Chinese magicians and people that I knew. And I reached out to all sorts of folks that had contacts in China. So I went in 2 weeks early before my next gig the next year in February of 1980, so it was. And I flew in, and I arranged a tour to go up to Beijing and meet the acrobatic troupe up there and get to talk to the magicians and get to know them. And one of the things was a trip out to the Great Wall. And of course, I had my magic with me. So when I say I performed at the Great Wall, it's true. I did. It wasn't a paid booking. I ended up having this picture of me on the Great Wall of China doing, of course, the Chinese linking rings.
Of course.
What else? Iconic.
That's excellent.
The meeting with the Chinese acrobats was by far the best thing, though, because we got a chance to meet. I had a translator, and so we went backstage afterwards, and I'm talking with these guys and start going through the translator to do this, and we reach a point where we start doing magic, sleight of hand for each other. The head of the troupe turns to the translator and says, "Okay, now you have to go away," because he wasn't going to expose any of the magic that we were doing.
Oh, yeah.
It turned out that we started talking about working, what it was like for them working during the Cultural Revolution. And I was asking about that, and I said, "Was that? I've heard that you had to explain how all the tricks work."
Oh.
He said, "Yeah, that's true. They insisted that we actually explain because it was considered elitist if we knew how it worked and we didn't share it with the general public."
Oh.
I went, "That must have been awful." He said, "Yeah, it was terrible. We told them how it worked. We've been worse. We actually told them how it really worked.
Oh,
We just lied to them.
Oh, is that
we
true?
made up stuff about how the stuff was done." That's just great.
Oh, that's great.
So,
All right, we're going to go on to our next headline. Princess Stephanie of Monaco and Peter shared a pastry in Paris.
and the answer is also true.
Yay!
Also true. So, this is, again, these early cruise years, working on this ship. This was on the QE2, traveling with these folks. It turned out that they were very wealthy Arab Parisians, and they were a fabulous family that was traveling, the Auger family that was there. And they had the Queen suites up on the QE2. These suites, I think, on this cruise, were going for $300,000 a piece. They had 4 of them.
Wow.
I tell you, they were the nicest folks. I mean, you sort of think that some people who are super wealthy are going to be snobby or what. None of that stuff. They would go out on tours. They'd invite the band to come with them. They invited me to join them and stuff. They asked me to come up to Queen's Grill and do some magic for them. And at the time, this is like mid-'80s, at the end of this, after having this fabulous meal and doing some close-up magic for them, tipped me $500 for coming up to do this. And I went, "It's a lot of money. You don't have to do this." And they went, No, please. It turned out that they flew me over to Paris for a private party. And at this private party were folks like Alain Proust and Niki Lauda, famous race car drivers, and Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top, and all these amazing folks that were there. After that party was finished, this birthday party kind of kept rolling on for several days. They said, "Would you like to stay on?" I went, "Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I'm happy to do that."
Would you like to stay on?
Would I like to stay on? And I ended up doing some other magic they were part of the McLaren group, the Formula One racing group. So I ended up doing some magic as part of an event for those guys as well. And then at one of these parties, they doing such stuff. And this one pretty young woman was there, and she decided to play a prank on me. And she held out this little cream puff pastry to me and said, Does this smell good to you?" And we'd all been drinking fairly heavily. And I went, "Let me smell." And so I reached over I leaned in to smell this thing, and she pushed it into my face and ran off laughing. And I went, "Oh, man, I should have seen that coming." A couple days later, I'm on a train because I have family in Switzerland, and I'm on the train from Paris to Zurich, and I'm walking down the aisle of the train, and I see a copy of the big magazine, the French magazine Paris Match, and Paris Match magazine, and on the cover was this girl.
Oh.
And I stopped staring at this thing, and I asked the person who was reading this thing, I said, "Who is that?" Because I had to know. They said, "Oh, who this? You mean the Princess Stephanie of Monaco?"
Oh.
And I went, "Oh, I was just at a party with her. She stuffed a pastry in my face." It was like this amazing thing. So I called my host afterwards, and I said, "Kathy, you could have told me that was Princess Stephanie." She said, "Would you have had as much fun if you knew?" And I went, "No, you're probably right.
Oh.
It was much more fun just not knowing who these people were. They were just people."
Now it's a great story.
Yeah. So that was sharing the pastry.
Next one.
Next.
Okay. Peter played in Einstein's backyard.
Oh, gosh. That's not, I told you I was a faculty brat, but really, Einstein's backyard? That can't. Oh, yeah, actually, it is true.
Oh, it is true.
It is true. Yeah.
How did that happen?
Princeton. My parents came over in the early 40s, and they were refugees from Switzerland. And my father had an invitation to come and work in Princeton at the Institute of Advanced Studies. He then went on to Syracuse and Laramie, Wyoming, and University of Michigan. And eventually, down the road, I was born. And then they came back to Princeton. And my mother and dad were close friends of Einstein and his household and his family. Madame Dukas, and also his close associate, the Bargmans, and so there were times we'd go over and visit, and I was a youngster, and I was just down in the backyard playing in his backyard while they were having coffee and chatting inside about all sorts of heavy stuff while I was just hanging out.
Wow, do you have any pictures of your parents with Einstein?
I don't think I do.
Oh, that'd be priceless, huh?
I don't think I do. Yeah. But I have another Einstein story for you.
Oh, go.
So my father's brother was trapped in Germany during the war, but came over, became a psychologist, ended up in Manhattan, Kansas. He died a couple of years ago, and at the wake for him, which was out in Manhattan, Kansas, and afterwards I'm sitting next to a lady, and she said, I knew Franz. My father's name was Hans. He said, I knew Franz very well. And, a strangest thing happened the other day because we were talking about Einstein and mathematics and physics stuff that sort of came up. She said, well, I actually met a guy a couple of years back who was traveling around and we were sitting and talking. And at one point he said, would you like to see Einstein's brain? I've got it in the back of my truck.
Okay.
And she said, he did. So I went and researched this. Turns out the guy who ran the autopsy on Einstein kept the brain and traveled around the country with Einstein's brain and would occasionally slice off pieces of it and send them off to research institutes.
Oh, that's crazy.
Okay. You're guys gonna have to go Google this and check this out because it's a true story.
Wow.
So
wow. So
okay,
I don't even know what to say.
I know. It's like, are you kidding me? Yeah. So this guy he became obsessed. He ended up getting divorced. Then he traveled around the country with. He really. I don't know where to go with that.
I don't either. I've seen the guys with the watches in their jacket. They're like, hey, you wanna check out the watch? It's like, hey, I got Einstein's brain in the back of the truck. Hey.
Exactly.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Gosh dang it.
Okay.
All right. Last headline. Sigourney Weaver and Peter were part of a theater company in college. He directed her in his show.
It's true.
Oh,
it's actually true. And I saw she was doing a show in New York not too long ago, and I went up to her after the show, and I dug out a program copy from the show that we did. This was back in college. She was, I think, a year behind me or so behind me. And we were part of a theater group in there called The Company. And we did a production, one of these productions. We did all sorts of wonderful things, classical stuff and other interesting things. And she was very active politically as well and very interested in alternative theater. And we were doing a production of Macbeth that was based on Japanese No theater. We did it with candlelight, all by candlelight, and Japanese costumes and masks and staffs and things, and Sigourney played our chief witch. I can't say that I've maintained a close friendship with her. She's gone on to do other things in her life, I guess. I hear about her every once in a while.
Well, you could say it. It may not be true, but you could say it.
Yeah.
That was fact. Or something John just made up.
We're going to move on to some fan questions. You'd like some fan questions there, Peter?
I'm ready for some fan questions.
Okay, here we go. Jeff Horton, an excellent magician out of Connecticut, he asks, how did your relationship with Monday Night Magic begin? We kind of talked about that. And how has the landscape of magic in New York City changed over the years?
Oh, that's so great. That's a great question. So it's an amazing thing to see this evolution of magic. I mean, I remember when I first came to New York. I told you about working at the Magic Townhouse way back when. So I ended up becoming the one of the resident magicians there. It was myself and Wesley James and a guy named Al Cooper. There were many other people, and of course Dick Brooks and Dorothy Dietrich, which were the owners, and they really ran the place that was there. There were other places for magic in New York at the time, but not many. So there was things like the Playboy Club. And I remember going to see Harry Blackstone Jr. perform at the Playboy Club. Over the course of time, there was the Magic Townhouse. Then Imam brought in Mostly Magic into New York City. And then when Imam closed Mostly Magic, there really was nothing in New York. We opened Monday Night Magic. And since then, there are all these wonderful performers and work that happened. With early years, I would do magic for people. I consulted with alternative theater groups. But since that time, there's been this proliferation of really great performances and shows in magic. So you can really see how this interest in magic, and it's been, much as you may not be a fan of America's Got Talent for how they treat people, still that has done so much great stuff for magic. This and Penn and Teller with their show have been out there. People are now at a point where they understand magic is not for kids.
Yeah.
It's an adult interest. So, you have a number of shows, and I will tell you that we did Magical Nights for the long time at the Regency Hotel. Steve Cohen's got his show on there. My friend Noah Levine has got a show up at Tannen's. It's just gone from Tuesday nights only to Tuesday, Wednesday. Now it's 3 nights a week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights. It's happening there. And one of our partners, Todd Robbins, has just gotten the show going at it's called the McKittrick Hotel. It's where a show called Sleep No More happens, which is based on Macbeth, but it's this interactive piece where you don a mask and you follow people through. It's a non-linear performance, and it's been running for 10 years.
Wow.
And there's all sorts of great stuff there. But Todd has got this thing going called Speakeasy Magic. It started out just late on the Saturday nights. Currently, it's running Thursday, Friday, and 2 shows on Saturday in New York. It's high end. People come into the space. There are 9 different tables. It's a dusky place, theatrical fog in it, so it feels like an old speakeasy. Piano player over in one corner, long bar along one sense, and people just come in and they each get a performance of close-up magic at their table as well as seeing stage magic. We were talking about this changing sort of this view of magic that's happening.
Yeah.
You can see it also all over the place. Magic clubs are suffering because of the internet and the closing of brick and mortar stores. But I'm hoping there'll be sort of this regeneration when people realize that the internet is not a place to get together with people, really.
Yeah.
You can learn stuff, but you really learn stuff when you hang with people and watch them work. There are all these new places that are opening up. There's the California Magic Dinner Theater that's out there. There's a place that's opening outside of Los Angeles near Palm Springs. It's going to be called Marvin's, that Jeff Hobson is coordinating and opening up there. So there's Chicago Magic Lounge that's opened up in Chicago. You've got Mystique Dining in Folsom, California, and also in Logan, Utah. You've got Joe and Carol Given that are doing Theater of Dreams, and Cosmo Solano has got his place going. There are all these places and these events and these things that are happening that magic has just blossomed. And the interest in seeing live magic has blossomed and been really encouraged, I think, by the amount of really good magic and the respect that magic is being seen, that sort of the shows that you see on television that support that people want to see it live. The other day at Speakeasy Magic, we were talking about this, and a friend of mine, Patrick Davis, recounted a story of hearing people talk about magic and realizing that they've come to view it in a way that they view music. So they realize the magicians are often doing covers of classic effects, the way musicians do covers of classic songs.
Interesting.
So they will go and they'll see somebody do like Cups and Balls. And instead of going, oh, I've seen that before, they'll go, oh, I love the way he changed the ending on this. And he did that. People are starting to become sophisticated and educated in magic in a really good way to appreciate the fine touches and sort of the artistry that people bring to it. It means that we have to up our game. We have to be really good because they are starting to become educated, but that's okay. that'll just drive us further.
No, that's going to raise the bar for all of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, that's a fascinating topic of conversation. In fact, you know what? You answered one of a question I didn't even ask you yet. Michael Worsham, another terrific magician out of Maryland, he asked, although you probably kind of already answered this, do you think other magic shows in New York, like The Illusionist, Stephen Cohen's Chamber Magic, which you mentioned, Joshua Jay's Six Impossible Things, and others have helped MN, Monday Night Magic? Do you think they've helped Monday Night Magic or not?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. We don't advertise. We're word of mouth. And with Josh Jay, sorry I didn't mention him earlier. Josh had actually asked me he asked me to come in and chat with him about an effect he was thinking about putting in the show. And we worked on that for a while, which was great. So no, I think that they all, in the show at the Nomad, Dan White's show, the Nomad that happens in there. There have been a number of other things, Amazeballs that, Eric Dittelman has got going out in Brooklyn. I think these things really help. There's, anything that encourages people to appreciate and see really good magic. The only time magic is hurt is when there's bad magic.
Yeah.
Seriously. This came up at one point when I was doing a design for A Leap of Faith on Broadway. The director said, "Hey, so we got the faith healer. He's a real con man. He's a magician that's got this kid wants to do magic. So how about if we have the kid come out and do some bad magic, and then we have the faith healer come out and do good magic?" And I went, it's Broadway. There's really no room for bad magic on Broadway. Yeah. How about if we do good magic with a kid and do even better magic for the faith healer, the preacher?
There you go.
He went, "Oh, that's a really good idea."
Yeah.
It's like, yeah. So good magic helps good magic and just sort of increases the interest.
All right, so Rob Balchunas, known as Rob the Balloon Guy. You know Rob?
I'll just say tragic magic. That's all I have to say.
Okay.
He'll know what that means.
He will know what that means?
Yeah.
Okay. He asks, how do you keep a weekly magic show fresh?
Wow. So, there are a couple of things. We really try to rotate up the performers. We really try to bring in people. It's a great opportunity for us to try to, mentor new people. There have been a lot of folks that sort of started with us as people, as even ushers, and then went on to do close-up magic, and then went on to do stage. We mentor people. We bring in people from outside. We ourselves try to keep the quality really high. It's a lot of work. It's true. And takes a lot of concentration and a lot of commitment.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Peter. Thanks for doing my show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
You were super fun.
Oh, I hope so.
If someone wants to get a hold of you or get tickets for Monday Night Magic, where can they get a hold of you, or where can they get tickets?
The easiest thing to do is reach out to me on Facebook. You'll find me up there, Peter Samelson up there. Or you can reach me at psamelson, no spaces, PSAMELSON at gmail or mac.com or AOL.com or iCloud.com or just about anywhere. Or you go to samelsonmagic.com and see some stuff up there. One last thing, that if you're hearing this before the end of July, there's this little show that we put together, a little festival up in Phoenicia, New York. So it's the Phoenicia Festival of Magic. It's happening up there, July 26th, 27th, 28th, with Harrison Greenbaum and myself and Leland Faulkner and Alex Boyce and Lucy Darling and Chris Capehart. And Chris Wheels from up there is going to help us out with close-up as well. Okay. So it's going to hopefully be the first of many years.
And what is the name of that again?
It's called, you can find it at PhoeniciaMagic.com up there, Phoenicia magic.com. So it's Phoenicia Festival of Magic up there.
Excellent. That'll be fun. Fun. Hopefully we'll get some folks down there for you. Thanks to all my variety artists. If you found this podcast valuable, tell a friend. Tell a friend to listen. Say, listen to this podcast. That's how we can spread the word. You can reach me from my Facebook page. Just shoot me out a message. While you're there, join my Facebook group at The Variety Artist, where you can ask me to ask questions of our guests like my friend Peter. Now go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.
That's all for this episode of The Variety Artist, but your journey continues on our website. Go to thevarietyartist.com for more strategies, insight, and resources, as well as show notes on today's guest to assist you in your career. We'll see you on the next episode of The Variety Artist. But until then, go out and book those gigs, make some money, and have some fun.